Today, we will begin a journey through the life of Winston Churchill, exploring his path from uncertain childhood to powerful leadership. This story has been shaped for English learners at the B2 level, offering clear language, rich descriptions, and steady progression. As you read, you will meet a figure who faced hardship with determination and used knowledge, experience, and resilience to guide a nation through its darkest moments. Each chapter will help you grow your vocabulary, strengthen your reading skills, and understand historical events with confidence. Let's begin. Winston Churchill grew up in a world shaped by tradition, empire, and strict expectations. From an early age, he sensed that he did not quite fit the pattern his family hoped for, yet he pushed forward with unusual determination. His childhood in a large and prestigious household did not always feel comforting. He often spent long periods away from his parents and learned to rely on his imagination to fill the empty spaces. These early experiences did not weaken him. Instead, they built a deep inner strength that would guide him through the most demanding moments of his life. At school, he was not considered an exceptional student. His teachers believed he lacked discipline, and they frequently misunderstood his restless energy. Still, he found himself drawn to language, history, and stories of heroic achievements. He read about faraway lands and dramatic battles, dreaming of adventures that could challenge him and give him a sense of purpose. His fascination with the world outside the classroom grew as he discovered how much larger life could be beyond exams and school rules. When he entered military college, a path chosen partly out of practicality and partly out of ambition, he began shaping his identity. He pushed himself to improve, motivated not by the judgment of others, but by his own desire to prove he could rise above expectations. Training brought structure and discipline, giving him the chance to transform his restless energy into steady progress. He learned to observe situations carefully, plan with strategy, and react with swift decision-making. These skills would later become essential to his role on the global stage. His early military service introduced him to places and cultures far different from his own. He traveled to regions where the environment was harsh, the conflicts were intense, and the future was uncertain. These experiences revealed the complexity of leadership and the weight of responsibility. He witnessed the consequences of war and understood that real strength came not only from courage, but also from careful judgment. During these formative years, he began shaping perspective that would one day guide a nation through darkness. At the same time, he developed an interest in writing. He recorded what he saw, turning his observations into articles that captured both events and emotions. Writing offered him a way to process his experiences, reflect on his choices, and communicate his ideas with clarity. It allowed him to build a connection with people who would never travel where he had been or witness what he had seen. This skill would become one of the most powerful tools of his life, helping him inspire millions in the future. These early chapters of his journey formed the foundation of a character defined by perseverance and resilience. Although he did not yet know what challenges awaited him, he moved forward with a growing sense of identity and purpose. Step by step, he prepared himself for a role he could not yet imagine, but which history would demand of him when the world needed steadfast leadership the most as Winston Churchill entered public life. He carried with him determination shaped by his early years. He began his political career during a period of shifting alliances, social tensions, and international uncertainty. His first steps in Parliament were not without difficulty, yet he approached every challenge with bold conviction. He believed that strong ideas required strong voices, and he refused to soften his opinions simply to gain approval. This independence sometimes isolated him, but also earned him respect from those who valued clear thinking and honesty. Churchill devoted considerable time to understanding the concerns of the nation. He studied policies, debated strategies, and examined the long-term consequences of government decisions. His speeches, even in these early years, revealed a rare mixture of historical knowledge and persuasive energy. He learned to use language not just as a tool, but as a bridge between leaders and citizens. Each carefully chosen word allowed him to communicate urgency, hope, or warning with remarkable precision. Throughout the stage of his career, he shifted political parties more than once, a decision that puzzled some of his contemporaries. Yet he insisted that his loyalty lay with the principles he believed would best protect the country's future. He was willing to change direction if he felt the path ahead required it. This flexibility reflected his broader understanding of leadership, which demanded not blind loyalty but thoughtful evaluation of each unfolding situation. International affairs occupied much of his attention. He observed the rising tensions in Europe and studied the actions of governments across the continent. His experiences abroad gave him insight into the dangers that often grow unnoticed until they reach a critical point. He warned against threats that others underestimated, believing it was safer to prepare for the worst than to hope for the best without evidence. Many colleagues dismissed his concerns as overly dramatic, but he continued raising his voice in the hope that someone would listen. His personal life also took shape during these demanding years. He found companionship in a family that balanced his intense public responsibilities with stability and affection. Home became the place where he could reflect quietly, write extensively, and strengthen the emotional foundation that allowed him to face the often unforgiving political world. His writing expanded into books, where he explored history, military strategy, and biography. Through these works, he deepened his understanding of the past and sharpened his sense of the future. Despite facing criticism, setbacks, and political isolation, Churchill refused to retreat. He used every difficulty as an opportunity to refine his beliefs and reinforce his resilience. These years prepared him for the turbulence that would soon engulf Europe, and they taught him that true leadership required more than authority. It required vision, courage, and the willingness to stand alone when necessary. The world was moving toward a crisis that would test every nation, and Churchill was slowly becoming the figure who would guide his country through its darkest hour. As the 1930s unfolded, Winston Churchill found himself increasingly at odds with many political leaders of his time. While much of Europe hoped to avoid another devastating conflict, he sensed danger approaching with growing clarity. His study of military history, combined with his observations of foreign governments, convinced him that peace based on wishful thinking would not last. He saw patterns repeating themselves and recognized how quickly threats could spread when left unchallenged. His warnings grew more frequent and more urgent, but they often fell on unwilling ears. During these years of political isolation, he spent long hours reading, writing, and gathering information from a wide network of contacts. He believed that understanding the world required continuous effort, and he never stopped learning. Reports from diplomats, military officers, and foreign observers helped him piece together a picture that many others avoided confronting. He discovered small details that revealed larger truths, and he organized them carefully, forming arguments he hoped would convince decision-makers before it was too late. His persistence showed a deep commitment to the safety of his country. Life outside politics also shaped him during this period. He spent considerable time at his countryside home, where he found peace in painting, building walls by hand, and reconnecting with nature. These activities allowed him to regain balance when political battles left him frustrated or exhausted. The simple rhythm of physical work gave him a sense of control when national events felt dangerously unpredictable. Painting, in particular, became a refuge where he could explore color, light, and emotion without judgment or urgency. These quiet moments strengthened his resilience and helped to maintain clarity during turbulent times. Despite the comfort of these personal pursuits, he never lost sight of his duty. He continued preparing for the moment when his country would finally recognize the importance of his warnings. Each speech and article he produced during these years carried the weight of his conviction. Even when he spoke to only a few supporters, he believed that truth had to be voiced. His writing reached thousands, offering insights that were sometimes unpopular, but always grounded in careful analysis. In this way, he built a foundation of influence that would soon become essential. When the threat in Europe finally became impossible to ignore, Churchill's reputation began to shift. People who had once dismissed him now returned to his earlier speeches, realizing how accurately he had described the dangers ahead. His persistence, once seen as stubbornness, now appeared as foresight. As fear spread across the continent, his confident tone offered a sense of direction. Although he had endured years of criticism, he did not seek revenge or recognition. Instead, he focused on preparing the country for the storm he had long anticipated. These final years before the crisis revealed the depth of Churchill's character. He demonstrated that leadership could exist even without official authority. His dedication to truth, his ability to learn from history, and his refusal to remain silent created a powerful example of responsibility. When the world eventually reached a breaking point, he was ready, shaped not by comfort or approval, but by persistence, preparation, and unshakable belief in the values he held. When a long-feared conflict finally erupted across Europe, Winston Churchill stepped into a role that demanded every ounce of strength he possessed. The responsibility placed upon him was immense, yet he accepted it with calm resolve. He understood that the nation needed stability, courage, and unwavering direction during its darkest moments. The early months of war tested not only military readiness, but also the emotional resilience of the population. Cities faced danger from the air. Families endured uncertainty, and communities braced themselves for losses they could not yet imagine. From the very beginning of his leadership, Churchill focused on unity. He believed that a nation divided in fear could not survive the trials ahead. His messages to the people emphasized endurance, collective strength, and the belief that perseverance had overcome even the heaviest challenges. He frequently reviewed reports from military commanders, studied maps with meticulous attention, and searched for strategies that could protect both civilians and soldiers. His long experience with history guided his decisions, reminding him that determination often shaped outcomes more than sheer force. As battles intensified, the weight of leadership grew heavier. Nights were filled with briefings, decisions, and urgent assessments of rapidly changing situations. He traveled to sites damaged by enemy attacks, walking among ruins where homes and streets had been shattered. These visits were not ceremonial. They allowed him to see the impact of war firsthand and helped him understand what ordinary people endured each day. He carried these impressions back to his office, using them to strengthen his resolve and to shape strategies that considered not only military demands but also the human cost of each decision. International cooperation became increasingly important as the conflict expanded. Churchill studied the movement of allied nations, searching for opportunities to build stronger partnerships. He maintained constant communication with leaders abroad, exchanging information and encouraging shared commitment in the face of overwhelming challenges. His understanding of global dynamics helped him recognize which alliances could shift the balance of the war. Through careful diplomacy, he built relationships that would later become decisive in the struggle for peace. Despite the unrelenting pressure, Churchill continued writing. He produced reports, reflections, and analyses that documented events with clarity and purpose. These writings were more than administrative records. They were attempts to capture the meaning of the struggle and the sacrifices demanded by history. Writing allowed him to examine his own thoughts, organize complex information, and communicate long-term strategies to those around him. It also provided rare moments of quiet in a period dominated by stress and urgency. As the war progressed, the nation discovered new sources of strength within itself. Communities adapted to danger, industries shifted to support military needs, and people learned to endure uncertainty with remarkable discipline. Churchill watched this transformation with deep admiration. He believed that the spirit of ordinary citizens formed the backbone of national survival. Their resilience gave him renewed determination each time the situation grew grim. He felt responsible for honoring their courage through decisions that would protect their freedom and secure their future. Through these demanding years, Churchill remained a symbol of endurance. His leadership style combined caution with daring, realism with inspiration, and authority with responsibility. He often carried the burdens of the conflict silently, but he never allowed doubt to interfere with the duty he believed he owed to his country. The struggle continued with unpredictable turns, yet he faced each day prepared to guide the nation through whatever challenges awaited as the conflict stretched on. The demands placed on Winston Churchill grew even more complex. Each phase of the struggle required new strategies, fresh endurance, and a constant ability to adapt. He spent long hours meeting with military advisors, reviewing intelligence reports, and examining the shifting positions of Allied and enemy forces. The global nature of the conflict meant that crises could emerge at any hour and in any region, leaving him little time for rest. Yet he continued, driven by a deep belief that perseverance was the only path toward eventual victory. During this period, technological developments played an increasingly significant role in the progress of the war. Churchill followed these advancements closely, recognizing that new tools and methods could change the course of events. He encouraged scientists, engineers, and strategists to explore possibilities that had once seemed impossible. He understood that innovation could compensate for limited resources and provide strategic advantages at crucial moments. His willingness to embrace new ideas revealed a forward-looking perspective that set him apart from many leaders of his time. At home, the endurance of the population remained central to the nation's strength. Civilians adapted to daily challenges with remarkable discipline, finding ways to maintain routine amid constant disruption. Food shortages, travel restrictions, and the threat of sudden danger became part of ordinary life. Despite these hardships, communities supported one another with quiet determination. Churchill observed this resilience with gratitude, recognizing that morale formed a crucial part of national defense. Their courage reinforced his conviction that the struggle must continue until freedom was secured. As the conflict widened, cooperation among Allied nations deepened. Churchill traveled extensively to attend critical meetings with international leaders, discussing long-term strategies and coordinating actions across continents. These journeys required stamina, as they often involved long flights, dramatic time differences, and high-pressure discussions. Yet, he considered them essential. He believed that unity among allies was the foundation of eventual success. Through careful negotiation and shared purpose, he helped strengthen bonds that would shape not only the war's outcome, but also the future of international relations. Meanwhile, he continued documenting the unfolding events with precision. His notes captured the complexity of decisions made under pressure, the progression of major battles, and the emotional weight carried by those responsible for guiding the nation. Writing allowed him to examine the consequences of each choice and to reflect on how history might judge the leaders of his age. It also served as a reminder that victories and failures alike must be recorded honestly, for future generations would need to understand the lessons hidden within each moment of crisis. In the most difficult phases of the struggle, Churchill relied on inner discipline to maintain clarity. He learned to separate personal fatigue from the responsibilities of leadership, recognizing that he could not allow emotion to overshadow judgment. This self-control did not make him distant, but rather strengthened his ability to guide others with steady assurance. Even when the situation appeared bleak, he searched for opportunities, alternatives, and hidden strengths. His ability to remain focused during moments of extreme pressure inspired those around him, reminding them that determination could outweigh fear. As the war continued, the balance began slowly to shift. Hard-won progress replaced uncertainty, and the nation sensed the first signs of improvement. Churchill recognized these developments with cautious optimism. He knew that the conflict was far from over, yet he allowed himself brief moments of relief, aware that each small achievement brought the world one step closer to peace As momentum gradually turned in favor of the Allied nations, Winston Churchill intensified his focus on shaping the final phases of the struggle. He understood that even when signs of progress appeared, overconfidence could lead to costly mistakes. Each advance needed careful planning, and each success required responsible follow-through. He spent long nights reviewing changes in the global situation, ensuring that every decision aligned with long-term objectives. Though the tide was shifting, he remained aware that the path to peace still demanded patience, precision, and unwavering resolve. The coordination among Allied forces grew stronger during this period. Churchill worked closely with commanders and political leaders across oceans, strengthening cooperation that had taken years to develop. These partnerships relied on trust, clear communication, and shared sacrifice. He respected the vast efforts made by soldiers and civilians in many lands, recognizing that victory depended on collective commitment rather than the strength of any single nation. Through constant discussions and strategic planning, he helped build a unified approach capable of facing the final and most demanding challenges. At home, citizens continued to show remarkable endurance. Although optimism slowly returned, the daily hardships did not disappear. Families still faced shortages, limited resources, and the emotional strain of prolonged uncertainty. Churchill paid close attention to reports about conditions in towns and cities, understanding that civilian morale played a decisive role in maintaining national stability. He admired the disciplined efforts of workers who supported military production and the quiet strength of households that sustained their communities despite overwhelming difficulties. During these critical months, he also reflected deeply on the meaning of leadership. The weight of responsibility had shaped him in ways he had not anticipated. He realized that effective leadership required more than determination, intuition, or strategic insight. It required humility, the willingness to accept difficult truths, and the ability to learn from experience. He acknowledged errors when necessary, corrected his course when conditions demanded it, and always prioritized the safety and future of the nation. These reflections strengthened his understanding of the demands of public duty. As the Allied forces advanced, Churchill recognized the importance of preparing for the world that would emerge once the conflict ended. He studied economic reports, examined potential diplomatic challenges, and considered how nations might rebuild their societies after years of destruction. He believed that peace required planning just as war required strategy. A stable future would depend on cooperation, fairness, and the rebuilding of trust between nations. These forward-looking efforts occupied much of his attention, even while the final battles demanded intense focus. Churchill continued to record events with his characteristic precision. His writings from this period reveal careful analysis, emotional restraint, and a deep sense of responsibility toward the historical record. He believed that future generations would need to understand not only the military progress, but also the broader human experience of the conflict. His attention to detail helped preserve the memory of sacrifices, achievements, and the complex decisions that shaped the course of history. As the conflict neared its decisive turning point, Churchill balanced hope with realism. He recognized that the end was approaching, yet he refused to underestimate the remaining challenges. His steady guidance helped maintain national discipline, ensuring that the final efforts were not weakened by impatience. He reminded himself that true victory required endurance until the very last moment. Through determination, cooperation, and unwavering commitment, he continued leading the nation toward the long-awaited promise of restored peace as the long and exhausting conflict approached its conclusion. Winston Churchill directed his efforts toward securing a victory that would be lasting and meaningful. He knew that final stages of struggle often carried unexpected risks, and he approached each decision with careful calculation. Reports arrived daily from numerous fronts, each carrying crucial information about advances, obstacles, and shifting conditions. Churchill studied these updates with disciplined attention, ensuring that the nation remained prepared for sudden changes. His experience taught him that even in moments of progress, caution remained essential. When the conflict finally drew to a close, the sense of relief across the nation was profound. The joy felt in the streets came from years of sacrifice, endurance, and collective effort. Churchill understood the emotional weight carried by every household, and he recognized how deeply the experience had shaped the nation. Yet amid the celebrations, he immediately turned his thoughts toward the challenges that would follow. Victory did not erase the enormous damage left behind. Cities lay in ruins, economies weakened, and families struggled with personal loss. Rebuilding required vision, discipline, and long-term planning. In the months that followed, Churchill worked to guide the nation through the transition from war to peace. He evaluated economic priorities, reviewed plans for reconstruction, and considered how international relations would evolve in the changing world. He believed that cooperation between nations was essential to preventing future conflicts. He supported efforts to establish new frameworks for dialogue and partnership, hoping that shared responsibility could replace the mistrust that had fueled previous tensions. His understanding of history reinforced his belief that lasting peace depended on fairness and stability. Despite his leadership during the conflict, Churchill soon faced political shifts at home. Public expectations were changing rapidly. Citizens who had endured years of hardship now sought social reforms, improved living conditions, and a stronger safety net for families. Churchill respected these desires, yet his political vision did not fully align with the new priorities of many voters. In a surprising turn, he lost his position in the first election after the conflict. Although the result disappointed him, he accepted it with dignity, recognizing that democracy required respect for the will of the people. This period outside of government allowed him time for reflection and writing. He returned to his books, essays, and historical studies, documenting the events he had witnessed and the decisions he had made. Writing offered him a renewed sense of purpose, and he approached it with the same discipline he had applied to leadership. His works combined detailed analysis with personal insight, providing a unique perspective on the complexities of global conflict. Readers around the world valued these writings, which brought clarity to a turbulent era. As he stepped away from political responsibility, Churchill continued to influence public thought through lectures, articles, and conversations with leaders from different nations. He believed that the lessons of recent history required constant reinforcement. The world was entering a new period marked by emerging tensions and shifting alliances, and he warned of dangers that could arise if nations failed to act with caution and unity. His experience lent authority to his words, and he remained a respected figure whose observations carried weight on the global stage. During these years, Churchill also found more time for his personal interests. He returned to painting, a pursuit that brought him peace and renewed energy. He spent quiet days in the countryside, surrounded by landscapes that reminded him of the enduring strength of nature. These moments of calm allowed him to recover from the emotional intensity of leadership. Though he had stepped back from political power, he remained deeply connected to the world's ongoing developments, ready to contribute whenever his perspective could help guide the future and the later chapters of Winston Churchill's life. He remained a figure of remarkable presence, even as the world continued to change around him. After returning to public office in the early years of the new decade, he brought with him the wisdom shaped by decades of leadership, conflict, and reflection. His second period in government was marked by a calmer tone, shaped less by urgent crisis and more by long-term planning. He focused on strengthening international cooperation, guiding foreign policy with measured judgment, and helping the nation adapt to post-war realities. As age gradually slowed his PHY cycle energy, Churchill relied increasingly on experience and intuition. He understood the complexity of the new global order, recognizing early signs of emerging competition and ideological tension. He encouraged dialogue, stability, and preparedness, believing that the lessons of recent history could not be forgotten. His approach combined caution with confidence, formed by the knowledge that peace required constant attention. He urged nations to remain aware of both the dangers and the opportunities of a rapidly changing world. Outside of political duties, Churchill devoted significant time to his writing. His multi-volume histories required immense discipline and careful research. These works earned him respect not only as a statesman, but also as an author of international significance. His ability to present complex events with clarity, depth, and coherence brought him global recognition. His commitment to recording history reflected his belief that future generations needed accurate account of the past in order to build a wiser future. The praise he received for these contributions added a new dimension to his legacy. In his private life, Churchill cherished quiet days at his countryside home. He spent long hours painting, creating scenes filled with light and calm that contrasted sharply with the intense experiences of his public career. The act of painting gave him a rare sense of peace and allowed him to express emotions that words could not fully convey. He tended gardens, observed nature, and enjoyed the simple routines that brought stability to his later years. These activities restored his spirit and helped him appreciate the beauty of the world he had worked so hard to protect. As time passed, Churchill gradually stepped away from the forefront of political life. He had given decades of service to his country, and the demands of leadership had taken a deep toll. Yet he remained a symbol of determination, courage, and resilience. Even in retirement, his opinions were sought by leaders who valued his perspective. He continued offering guidance when asked, always mindful of the responsibilities that came with influence. His voice, though softer with age, still carried the authority shaped by a lifetime of experience. In his final years, Churchill reflected on the extraordinary journey that had defined his life. He understood that history would remember not only his victories, but also his struggles, doubts, and imperfections. He accepted this with humility, believing that leadership involved both triumph and failure. The legacy he left behind was built not solely on achievements, but on perseverance, conviction, and a belief that nations must stand firm in defense of their values. His life demonstrated the power of endurance during moments of darkness and the importance of vision during moments of change. When his long life reached its end, the world paused to honor a figure who had shaped the course of history. His influence extended far beyond the years he lived, carried forward in the institutions he strengthened, the books he wrote, and the example he set. His story remains a reminder that determination can guide nations through crisis, and that steadfast leadership can inspire people to face even the greatest challenges with courage. His legacy, built across decades of service, continues to offer insight to anyone seeking understanding, resilience, and purpose.